I grabbed these like blue metallic heels to match like the skirt. It doesn't normally go with this like black top. It has like a metallic top, but I don't know if YouTube was on here, but you know, I got bottoms on, I got layers, but I thought, well, it could be a little matchy with this metallic blue shoe. So I talked to my sister today for a bit, and I put like a bunch of lotions on one of my shelves, like in this, it's like a linen closet, but I don't put any linens. And but I'm like worried that like the weight of all those lotions will be too much to sustain it. So if you hear like a loud crash, no, it was too much lotion. I guess. I don't know. I'm not a man, so I can't tell like weights of things. Um I call this episode "How Dare You?" Because in my rational woman brain, it is your fault as men that this fictional male character might have been, you know, two-timing this fictional female character. I'm offended and I blame you. Okay? I was really upset about this. So, anyway, that's where we left off yesterday. She found Drake smooching with Chown Ren. It's Chaun. I'm not, Chinese, and I'm not familiar with Chinese pronunciations. Um, but anyway, so I think he was like, "Oh, she kissed me," but I don't know. So we are about to find out. Also, more importantly, poor Jim has, a lisp right now. So she needs to guardian fix that for him and make him more comfortable. All right. Let's pick it up there. Let's get started. How was your day? I did lay out with the mutt for a little bit. That was nice. But then I'm like, I should call my sister. Let me pull you guys up. There you are. Hi. Okay. Oh, the and fried rice was Chinese, like pork fried rice, fried rice. Really that shrimp fried rice. Okay. We didn't finish the chapter yesterday, so I gotta find where I'm at in the pages. Okay. Mm. I stopped glaring at Drake long enough to take 2 steps over to Chuan Ren. Without thinking about it, I pulled hard on Drake's fire and slammed it into her, sending her flying backwards 3 feet. Don't think I'm not holding you responsible for this either, you witch. Both of you. I think you left the B off that word, Jim said. Witch! Chonren screamed, lunging forward for me, her long nails claw-like. I'm willing to admit that I would have been a goner if Drake hadn't been there. I might have caught Chuan Ren by surprise the first time, but she was first and foremost a warrior and had been for over 1,000 years. I really didn't stand a chance with her. Cease, Drake bellowed, suddenly in front of me, his body shielding me from Chuan Ren's attack. She snarled, something at him, but sheathed her claws, her dark brown eyes glittering with a deep red light that did not bode well. Mates. He turned his head slightly to look at me. What? One eyebrow rose. I followed his gaze and cleared my throat. Is there a fire extinguisher in this room? Chuan Ren spat something in Chinese. I lifted my chin, gave her a look that let her know I wouldn't dignify whatever insult she had hurled at me with a response, and fetched the small extinguisher from where it hung next to the door. By the time I put out the fire on the couch, coffee table, two chairs, and Shing, Drake had managed to get her to the other side of the room. She stood with her feet slightly apart, her eyes burning, looking every inch a dragon lady. It's like if you're gonna give someone fire, don't cheat on them, I guess. I am willing to admit I might have been a bit hasty with the first interpretation of what I saw, I told Drake as I set the extinguisher down and stepped over the slightly smoking, still moaning Shing. But the fact remained that you, I pointed at Chuan Ren, just declared war on him. I stopped next to Drake and leaned into him in a way that I hope screamed possession. And as odd as dragon politics are, surely lip wrestling the person you just declared war on is not standard operating procedure. I was supposed to meet Gabriel here to discuss a ceasefire, Drake said calmly, putting his arm around me and pulling me even closer. He did not show up. Okay, that explains why you are here. Now would you like to tell me why you're kissing him? I asked Chuan Ren. She turned her back on me, shaking her long black hair so it hung in a perfectly straight line down her back. She was attempting to seduce me again, that's all. Drake's voice might be placid, but I could feel the angry fire within him. Well, you know what? In her defense, she was like about 500 or 600 years older than him. So, I mean, she's been doing this a while. Seductress saying. Don't guy get all the break, Jim said, walking over to drool on the top of Shing's head. Again, I asked, twisting around to look at Drake, as in, she's seduced you other times. His jaw worked for a second, his eyes weary. We have a somewhat complicated history, was all he said. Complicated in that she's another ex-girlfriend. He said nothing but didn't dispute it. I sighed. I seem to be running into them with increasing frequency. Can you warn me when the next one pops up so I'll know that she's likely to try to kill me or get me sent to prison? One side of Drake's mouth twitched. I will try, he said gravely. Thanks. I turned back. Oh, is she thinking of that Perdita from the first one? Um, I turned back to Chuan Ren, who was now poking around a desk. So, I take it peace is out of the question. She looked down her nose at me. We will not rest until the green dragons are destroyed. I forebore to comment on her sleeping with the enemy tactic and simply said, okay, it's on now, just so you know you're going down. Drake did it before, and I have every confidence he can do it again. We left her sputtering and slamming things around the room. Sighing raced in when she hurled a vase through the window. We're going straight to the dentist, right? Jim asked as we walked through the lobby. I'll get you an emergency appointment with a vet who specializes in dentistry, I promised. I'm sure Nora must know of a good vet. Can I get a gold tooth to replace fifth one? No. How about an enamel tattoo? I heard they're all the rage. No. Jim would have a gold tooth. Meanie, Jim muttered, sucking on his loose tooth. What you said to Chuan Ren was not perhaps the wisest way to end a conversation, Drake told me as he beckoned the hotel doorman. Her temper was difficult enough without you reminding me of her past failures. I raised my eyebrow at him. Do you honestly think you're getting off this easily? No, he grinned as I followed Jim into a waiting cab. I have every confidence you're going to have much to say on the subject, but I anticipate the making up process will be most enjoyable to both of us. In fact, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, ice on your balls. The little smile I tried to hide curled my lips. I knew that Drake wouldn't betray me, but it wouldn't hurt him to wish to placate me. Drake wasn't the only one looking forward to our discussion. Chapter 16. So maybe he wasn't kissing her, it was just her. Still, I feel like the demon lord like subplot, it reminds me of like Game of Thrones with the White Walkers and like everything was happening and it's like, yeah, but can we remember there's like with the White Walkers around? Like this is bad, you know? Like I know like Cersei and your like weird affairs about like or the White Walkers, yeah. I woke up the following morning to find my breast on fire, literally. Ooh, I purred, shivering a little with excitement, despite the flames that licked up my body, right next to Drake's tongue, which was licking a suddenly aching breast. We haven't spent enough time together for me to be certain if you are the type of man who wakes up in the mood to frolic, but I see you are. Kinsem, where are you are concerned? I'm always in the mood to frolic. Did you get enough sleep? Oh, yes, I said, although whether I was answering his question or responding to his touch was unclear. Pleasure, sweet and pure, started at the touch of his mouth to my flesh. Do you guys like to frolic in the morning? Rippling out to all points on my body, turning me into one gigantic quivering erogenous zone. Is this goddess above? How can you be so delicious? My hand slid up his chest, around his ribs, then down his back. I flexed my fingers and dragged my nails gently up his spine, something I knew he liked. His head rose from the sweet torment. He was laving up my breast, the fire in his eyes so bright it made his eyes glow. I traced the line of muscles around his hips to the front, my fingers wrapping around the heavy, hot part of him, marveling yet again that such a simple bit of flesh and muscle could bring so much pleasure. You were right yesterday. I am always right, he growled, his entire body stiffening for a moment as I caressed him. Not even close, but you were right about the making up part being enjoyable. His mouth was busy with a sensitive patch of my flesh, but I heard him mumble something about my ire being worth tolerating just for the resolution of our differences. You promised me that you teach me to breathe fire, I reminded him. 25 hours a day. Okay. Are you frolicking right now? I bit his shoulder, releasing one hand to push him over onto his back. I think it would be an extremely handy skill to have, and what better time than the present to learn it? What better time indeed, he agreed, watching with interest as I flicked my tongue over two little pert nipples peeking through the dark hair of his chest. Let me have it, Drake. It is all yours, Kinsem. I bit gently on his nipple, enjoying the little shiver of pleasure that shook his chest. Not that I want your fire. Let me have it. Dragon fire roared up within him, spilling over into me. I allowed it to fill me, embracing and welcoming it. Focus it, Drake said in a tight voice as I moved over to nibble on the other nipple before using my tongue to trace the glossy trail of hair that led down his belly to point south. Make it take the form you want, then release it. A thick, abrupt burp of fire escaped me. Focus more. You're allowing yourself to be distracted. I looked down at his penis, standing so patiently, yet proudly, waiting for me to make my way to it. There's a lot to be distracted by. I had a thought about this shape shifting issue. You shift when you have an orgasm. Did you know that? I figured maybe if we make love a whole lot, it'll ease up your shifting muscles or whatever it is that's holding you back. I don't seem to be able to breathe the fire, do I? You must exercise control, Ashling. Without it, you'll never be able to harness the fire. It is a tool for you to use. Make it into what you want. I flicked my tongue across the tip of his penis, savoring the salty drop of moisture collected there. I gathered the fire within me, holding a mental picture of just what I wanted to do with it. As I opened my mouth to take him in, the fire blazed out, setting the lower half of his body ablaze. I concentrated until the fire was in a fine stream and licked a fiery path along the length of his shaft, sending a blast of it at the sensitive underside of the head. Drake shouted and just about came off the bed. I laughed. You can't tell me you don't like that. Christo's light doesn't even come close to it. Well, so she lit his dick on fire? Is that what should I take note that guys like that? How to Train Your Mate. Good one. Have you seen that movie? I've never seen that one. Okay. How to Train Your Dragon, I mean. Okay. Okay. Where was I? What does it feel like? I prompted, using both hands with my mouth to set up a rhythm that had his hips thrusting upward. It's an agony of ecstasy, he groaned. His fingers tangled in my hair. I glanced upward to see his eyes closed. His jaw tight as his fire in my mouth worked their magic. Agony of ecstasy was a good description, so I decided to lay him off the sharing hook and concentrate on bringing him to the very edge of rapture. Our bodies were coated in flame, Drake groaning nonstop and begging me to climb on him and end the torment. What a cool breeze whispered along my back. Dragon fire, being what it is, formed from the originating dragon's well of emotions. It had never yet harmed me or left me feeling anything but empowered and usually aroused, but for some reason this time I was left slick with sweat, as if the fire was impure. Just as Drake had had enough and was hauling me over himself, his penis poised to impale me, I caught the flash of something yellow from the corner of my eye. That's when I realized that what I thought was sweat was really water coming from overhead sprinklers. Imps, I yelled, sliding off Drake to point at the nasty little yellow creature bolting for the open window. Although Drake's bedding had been fireproof, the rest of the room hadn't been so treated, and everything from the drapes to the wardrobe, uncomfortable Louis XIV chairs, and a squat, ugly desk in the corner was aflame. As the word left my mouth, a smoke detector near the door went off, sounding a piercing siren that seemed to cut through the thick black smoke that was filling the room. Drake snarled an oath and was across the room before I could blink, the imp in his hands for a second before he hurled it out the window to the ground 3 stories below. He slammed open a second window. Not again, I cried, grabbing up his discarded shirt to slip on, and as urgent voices sounded the hall, Pal and Istvan burst into the room, both bearing fire extinguishers. Awkward. Drake snatched a third out of the bathroom and third out of the bathroom. I remember she would do runway walks. I don't think she did that. I think she just did like the whole being a courier. Um, and now the dragon business, but I don't think she did that. War with the imps now. This is war. Mhm. What is going on here? What is that appalling noise at such an unholy hour? Drake's mother stood in the doorway, clad in an elegant rose-colored silk negligee, her scowl enough to douse any flame. Her eyes pierced me, narrowing at the sight of me standing in nothing but Drake's shirt. You, it is all you're doing, this unpleasantness. The smoke billowed out around her as Nora appeared, peering over Catalina's shoulder, her eyes owlish as she watched the three men quell the last of the flames. Imps again? Yeah, Drake caught one as it was trying to leave. Ashling, I am prepared to be tolerant of many things, but this situation with the Imp Kingdom must come to an end, Drake said, coughing a little as the last blaze died under the white chemical foam. My house is well prepared to deal with the commonality of dragon fire, but it is not built to withstand fire set by murderous arsonists. I know, I'm so sorry. I wrung my hands, feeling utterly helpless as I surveyed the damage caused by the fire. It hadn't had long to burn, and yet the furniture was destroyed, the walls stained black by the smoke. I'll take care of it, I promise. I knew it was her doing. All those lovely antiques destroyed, Catalina said, shooting me another scathing look before sweeping past Nora and returning to her room. My shoulders sagged. Outside, in the stillness of an early London morning, sirens sounded. Drake's security system must have kicked in and alerted the fire authorities. I'll tell them it's controlled, Ispen said, clad in only a pair of pants. He too gave me a look as he walked past, although it wasn't nearly as daunting as Catalina's. My spirits took a nosedive. I'll get a cart to start clearing this mess away, Pal murmured, avoiding looking at me altogether. Oh, thank you, Royal. I was just thinking, like, how is she gonna get rid of them? Negotiate? I mean, I can't like uneat the M. I don't know. I mean, okay, so it's well, they're not demons, right? Because if they can't be killed, can't they just come back? I don't know. Um, Guilt, despair, and a frustrating sense of impotence filled me. Drake eyed me closely. You are all right? You did not breathe in too much smoke? No, I'm fine, I said miserably, unable to meet his gaze. Drake, I'm really sorry about this. Mm. She's not the one that lit it on fire, and why doesn't he help her? Well, I don't know. Mm. I dislike having any of my possessions taken from me, but I would rather lose a few pieces of furniture than you, was all he said, and despite the misery swelling within me, his words formed a solid little core of happiness. That happiness died within the next words. You have 24 hours to take care of the imp situation, or I will do it for you. He grabbed a pair of pants and shoes from a second wardrobe and retired to the bathroom. I thought about crumpling up into a little ball and wishing the world away. Jim burst out the moment the door was open. Fires of Abaddon, what's going on in here? You guys having an orgy or oh man? With lips pursed, Jim surveyed the mess. Slowly the demon turned to look at me. You had a barbecue and you didn't invite me. Two fat tears of self-pity rolled down my cheeks. Come, Ashling. No one was hurt and not much destroyed. Nora put her arm around me and escorted me out of the room. Let's have some breakfast, then put our hands together about how we're going to placate the imp kingdom. Breakfast, great idea. Nora, I could really go for a couple of grilled imps right about now, Jim said, following us out of the room. I just wanted to rewind the last couple days and do them over. A few hours later, Nora, Jim, and I left just as a cleaning crew arrived to muck out, repair, dry, and de-smoke Drake's bedroom. The last sight I had of Drake was a smoldering look he sent me before he left for Paris to deal with an issue that arose with his French businesses. He was as unsatisfied as I was with the lack of culmination of our morning's activities, but I knew Drake. His passion matched mine, so I was confident we'd find a way to get together before the sun had time to set. What is it they say about the weather on a wedding day? Jim asked as it stepped out of the house, glancing up at the sky filled with gray, sodding clouds. It is not my wedding day, I said, firmly giving Jim's leash a snap to pull it away from smelling a passerby's butt. Renee pulled up in front of the house, the windshield wipers of his taxi making slow passes across the wet windshield. Morning, Renee. Good morning. Hey, don't kill the messenger. You wanted a bloodless solution to the imp situation, and I suggested you marrying the current monarch. End of problem. It's not like it would be a real marriage or anything. Hi, Renee. I'll arm wrestle you for the best man position. I sighed as I followed Jim into the taxi. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Nora climbed into the front seat next to Renee, settling the carrier with Paco on her lap. Good morning, Renee. We've had a bit of an upset this morning. Best man? Renee asked, craning to look back at us. Upset? It's a long story. Can we tell you en route? We've got to get Nora to a meeting with the committee in 20 minutes. Then we're off to sacrifice Jim in order to make peace with the imps. Jim reeled back. Hey, hey, hey. I distinctly remember saying no to that whole sacrifice Jim idea. Renee gunned the engine and pulled out into traffic, narrowly missing a bus. Two elderly pedestrians, and a suicidal squirrel. Do not leave out a single word. I want to hear about it all. Fortunately, it didn't take long to bring Renee up to date with the latest happenings, everything from the fires to being gutted with a sword, which is good because it turned out that London headquarters of the International Guardians Guild was a short ride from Drake's house. I believe I understand, Renee said, turning in an underground parking garage. You must settle the imps most strenuously, and Nora must convince this committee that she has done nothing to be punished for. Hein? Right, and I have. I checked my watch. Oh man, where did the day go? I have less than 15 minutes to come up with a plan to get Araton, the demon lord, off my back so I can cope with the rest of the crap coming down on top of me. Lovely. Oh well, I'll have to do it after the Guardian meeting. I thought Nora's head was going to come off her neck. So fast did she swivel around to look at me. What is that about Araton? What dealings do you have with him? We pulled into a parking spot. We are here. I, too, am interested in hearing about this demon lord, Renee said. There's not much to tell, guys, honest. I made a gesture of innocence that I hoped would go far to explain. Evidently, because I'm technically a demon lord, there's some sort of etiquette or rule that says I'm eligible to vote on policies related to Abaddon or some such ridiculousness. And before anyone starts freaking out, I'm not going to get involved in any petty squabbles between demon lords. Renee stared at me in the rearview mirror. Nora gazed at me with a mixture of horror, concern, and sympathy. Jim groaned, laid its head on the seat, and covered its eyes with two big hairy paws. What? I asked everyone, wondering why they were making such a big deal of it all. Ashling, I can't believe you don't know about the Vexamin. I was sure you've heard of it. I sighed. I don't want to always be so clueless, but it's a bit difficult when I'm new and everyone assumes I know stuff. What's a Vexamin? And what does it have to do with Araton and all the surprised faces you're making at me? Renee shook his head as he got out of the car, opening my door, then going around to take Paco from Nora and help her out. Vexamin is the event that happens every 600 years. It falls on the autumnal equinox, which is in 3 days. Vexamin is an upheaval in Abaddon, when one demon lord rises to supremacy and rules over the others. Surely you've heard of it. I shook my head as I got out of the car, snapping a leash on Jim's collar. Nope. Jim, why didn't you tell me after we left Araton's place? You didn't ask me, my annoying demon said. Nora stumbled, grabbing my arm to stop me as we crossed the parking garage. You visited a demon lord in his abode? Renee sucked his teeth and looked thoughtful. It's not like I had any choice. I told them both. I was pretty much kidnapped, and I had just been skewered, if you'll remember. What's the big deal about me going to Araton's digs? It was that house in Islington that gave me the willies, so bonus points to you for sensing Araton's presence. Although I have to admit, I'm having doubts that he shot me. Nora's hands fluttered around with distress. Ashling, this just isn't done. No one I know, no one I've ever heard of, has visited a demon lord in his home. To do so would imply that one is. I straightened my shoulders, lifting my chin. Go ahead, I'm strong. I can take it. What am I, damned? Unclean, she said, after wrestling with the word for a moment. Unclean, as in impure, tainted, dabbling in dark powers? I asked, my heart dropping. It seemed like I just couldn't catch a break lately. That's as apt a description as any, Nora said slowly. She hesitated for a moment, then started toward the stairs that led to the building above us. I know you are innocent and not at all influenced by this demon lord you met, but it's vitally important now that you do not have anything further to do with him. As it is, I am not sure we are going to explain to the guild this latest, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm sorry to be giving you more trouble, I said miserably as we climbed to the lobby of a busy building filled with professional offices. People streamed by, thankfully ignoring us. I had no idea this Vexamin thing was going on. I never intended to become involved. But surely you must have noticed this Philipper. If you're who I think you are, leave me alone. Sorry. I'm like, who is this? You've noticed the increase this past week in outbreaks. First, the kobold scare, then imps, then blight hounds. Nora punched a floor number on the elevator panel, giving me a curious look. Renee blew out a breath. I don't spend longer than a second wondering why he was coming along with us. He seemed so much more a part of my little gang. I was just grateful to have one more head to consult. Mondo, 3 in a week, Nora nodded, and 3 last week at Vaticanus. That being, I asked, the start of Vexamin. It's the date when the ruling prince of Abaddon begins to lose his powers. Nora stepped onto the thankfully empty elevator. We all filled in with her, including a woman with short blonde hair who was carrying a coffee mug and a portfolio. I thought the situation was normal, I said, mindful of the stranger in our midst. To be honest, I thought it was due to the dir- to Drake and his kind. I had gathered that things like those outbreaks happen whenever they disagree. Not this sort of thing, Nora said, shaking her head. I mused on that for the few seconds it took to get to the seventh floor, following Renee and Nora as they walked down a long hallway to an office in the rear. Nora paused with her hand on the doorknob. Renee, the guild has very strict rules about who is allowed into their offices. I know you do not present any threat, but I want to warn you that you may be refused admittance. He gave one of his effective Gaelic shrugs. We will see. You do not mind if I come with you? No, certainly not. I'd be grateful for a friendly face. Nora gave him a bright smile that made me feel ashamed of my self absorption. Here she was facing an investigation into her professional capabilities, and I was too busy worrying about my own problems to be supportive and helpful. Don't worry, we won't let them mess with you, I said, with a little hug. If it's me causing the guild concerns, I'll formally de-mentor you, and we'll just go on in an unofficial capacity. Nora laughed, hugging me back. I wish it was that easy, but she let us not borrow trouble. But let us not borrow trouble. Brave hearts, everyone. She opened the door and stepped through it, Renee following. I started to go through the door, but found myself held back as if by an invisible webbing. Is it a ward? The door had been warded with a powerful protection ward, no doubt to keep dark beings out. Uh, that's not happening, Jim said. Ward, big one. There's nothing I love more than a little challenge, I muttered to myself as I opened the door in my mind, gathered up some dragon fire, shaped it, and focused it on the ward. The pattern glowed purple in the air for a moment. I grabbed Jim by the collar and forcefully shoved it through the doorway, bullying my way through the ward. I thought for a moment that I wasn't going to be able to pass it, but I broke through just as the purple ward turned silver, then evaporated. Whew, that was a toughie. You okay, Jim? Oh, thank you, a rock monster. Yeah, my Thursday night going fine, I guess. Wish I could do some magic and my house would be clean, but I feel like I've been brushed backwards, but yeah, okay, otherwise. The demon licked a few rumpled patches of fur. I turned to see where Nora had gone and found myself facing a room full of people all staring at me in disbelief. Nora included. Renee smiled. A tall, balding man, built like one of the dragon bodyguards, stepped forward. Obviously a security person. Guardian, mortal, identification. Nora brought out her wallet and showed him a card. Member number 1112. He read to another guard behind a computer who promptly tapped the information onto the keyboard. The second man nodded at the first. You may pass, the guard told her. She walked forward a few feet, stopping to chat with one of the men sitting behind a desk. The guard turned to Renee. Damon, immortal, identification? Or no, it said Damon immortal. He's immortal. What? I have my passport, Renee said pleasantly, but beyond that, he gave another shrug. What does it mean, Damon? Is that his last name? Immortal. What happens to him? You may pass. I sent a little triumphant smile to Renee, who winked at me. At last, confirmation of what I had suspected. He wasn't mortal. Now, if I just knew what a daemon was. Also, it's not maybe not his last name. Guardian, Wyvern's mate. The guard frowned at me, speaking loudly so everyone in the room, people waiting in a waiting area, others bustling around doing office work, could hear. Demon Lord, immortal, identification. I smiled pleasantly. All I have is my passport, too. I'm not a member of the Guardian Guild yet. Name? Ashlyn Gray. At least two people in the room sucked in their breath. One woman at a desk dropped a stack of papers and went running out of the room. Oh no! I'm beginning to feel like either a rock star or Typhoid Mary, I whispered to Jim. Go with rock star. You get groupies that way. You may pass, the guard said after a brief consultation with his partner. Thank you. Have a nice day. I spread my smile out to everyone who was still staring at me and followed Nora and Renee as they left the reception area. Some are born to greatness, others aspire to it, some have it thrust upon them, Renee misquoted as Nora took us to a conference room. Shakespeare didn't know the half of it, I grumbled softly as we entered the room. Chapter 17. Three people stood at one end of the room, chatting as they poured themselves coffee. All three stopped talking to turn around at our entrance. I recognized one of the men as Mark Sullivan, the guy who had left the injunction with me, but the woman and other man were strangers. Nora Charles? Mark asked, setting his coffee down at the head of the table. Nora nodded. No, thank you again, the Royal. And a hippo. Is that it? I see you have brought what? Witnesses? Friends, I said quickly, immediately going into defensive mode at the snarky tone in his voice. Naturally, if you do not wish to allow Nora any form of moral support, we will leave. I assume, however, that you have no problem with her facing this inquisition with a few friends at her side. Well done, Renee said under his breath. I shot him an appreciative glance. Mm. I can assure you, this interview was far from the inquisition you seem to imagine. Ashlyn Gray. Mark waved a hand toward the end of the table closest to us. By all means, stay if that's what you desire. The other two people were introduced. This is Irene Mathers, the head of the mentor program, and Greg Gillian of the Internal Investigative Committee. We took our seats at the opposite end of the table. I bent down to whisper a warning to Jim to be quiet unless indicated it could speak. All this power is going to your head, Jim grumbled. I had more fun with a man. He wasn't as for always forbidding me to talk just when things got juicy. I would be happy to send you back to him, I said in an undertone, then sat up and tried to look supportive and forthright. As you know from the injunction I left with Ashley Gray earlier, a complaint has been lodged regarding certain inconsistencies with your training program, Mark said, shuffling through a couple of papers until he found what he was looking for. He gave it a quick once over, then slid it to the side to the internal investigations guy. Although we are not at liberty to reveal the name of the individual making the complaint, I can assure you that the complaint itself was investigated thoroughly to determine if it was valid. Once that was deemed so, the injunction was issued and an investigation commenced to examine the subject of the complaint. That is you, Miss Charles. Nora inclined her head, her hands clasped in front of her on the table. She looked interested but relaxed. I gave her full points for style, although she presented a brave front. I knew she was worried about this slap in the face from an organization she had long served. The investigation was carried out by a three-person committee headed by myself, Greg Gillian said, evidently taking the floor. He didn't look like the sort of person who should be investigating anything. He looked like a Santa Claus who'd been on the South Beach diet for the past 10 months, balding with white hair and a beard and clothing that hung off him as if it had been meant for a much larger person. This man looked like anything but a take charge sort of person, which just shows why you should never trust first impressions. This interview is the final part of that investigation. It is your opportunity to answer the investigating team's questions and make a statement in your defense. Do you understand what has been said thus far? Nora didn't so much as bat an eyelash. Yes, I do. Excellent. The nature of the complaint itself is as follows, Greg said, consulting a leather portfolio. First, that you offered apprentice testing to an individual despite the fact that the period of testing had passed and subsequently gave approval for the individual mentioned to receive official recognition as an apprentice. Second, that you maligned the recent Gotham Convention. Third, that you aided and abetted a murderer in his attempt to escape. My jaw just about hit the table at the ridiculous allegations. I sneaked a peek at Nora out of the corner of my eye. She was sitting just as still and attentive as she had been when the interview started. My admiration for her restraint had self-control was boundless. If someone had lobbied those absolutely ridiculous accusations at me, I would have been ranting by now. As it was, I had to remind myself that I was there on forbearance, and my silence was more helpful to Nora than my protestations of her innocence. Those three allegations, I am pleased to say, were dismissed as groundless and based on the accuser's somewhat biased interpretation of recent events, Santa Greg said, peering over the top of his gold-rimmed glasses to see how Nora would take that news. She smiled slightly and inclined her head in acknowledgement. However, somehow I just knew there was a however coming. I whispered to Jim and nodded. The fourth and final accusation was not so easily dismissed. That is simply that you have taken into your home a servant of dark powers. Dark powers. Yeah, that's Ashling, I'm sure. I frowned, not sure whether he was referring to Jim or me. Pardon me for interrupting, but are you talking about me? Because if you are, I need to set the record straight on a few things. No, Miss Gray, I'm not referring to you. Santa Greg told me with a slight look of admonishment. The investigation team thoroughly checked the bylaws of the Guardians Guild and could find no mention of a rule regarding the possible apprenticeship of a demon lord or a wyvern's mate. Neither situation has come up before. However, amendments will be added at the earliest possible date. Irene Mathers piped up. I'd almost forgotten she was there, so quiet she had been. You may be interested to know that any existing members of the guild who are demon lords or wyverns mates will be allowed to retain their membership once the new laws go into effect. That is very nice of you. I worked hard to keep my voice sarcasm free, even though it was making my mouth sour. She gave me a weak little smile. The guild is interested in the welfare of all its members, even those of an untraditional mind. The being in question is the demon known as Ephraim, Santa Greg said. Oh, Jim, taking control of the conversation again. Jim's head shot up. It is true that Jim lives in the same house as I do, Nora agreed, but it is not my servant, nor do I have control over it any more than it has control over me. It does not have the least amount of influence over me, and I do not receive power or abilities from it. Everyone looked at Jim. You can speak if it's something helpful, I whispered. Yeah, what she said. Nora takes me on walkies with Paco and feeds me sometimes, and if she's really in a good mood, she'll scratch my belly. But other than that, we're just roomies. There's no favoritism or anything. She even yells at me when I get busy with the furniture or take a dump too close to Paco. Santa Greg looked confused. I wanted to throttle my demon. Paco is. Nora lifted the carrier off the floor and set it on the table. Visible in the wire door was the figure of a small chihuahua curled up asleep. Paco is my dog. Just so, regardless of the lack of contact with the demon Ephraim, it is the opinion of the investigating team that having such a being in constant close contact provides too much of a temptation. A recommendation has been made to restore your mentorship should the demon be removed from your residence. Wait a minute, I interrupted, giving Nora's hand a apologetic squeeze. I'm sorry to break in again, but this is just silly. Jim is my demon. It responds only to my commands. It can't give Nora power or corrupt her or do whatever it is you seem to think will happen with us living in the same house. Even if Jim wanted to, and you have to admit it, as demons go, Jim's not exactly a prime specimen. It couldn't, not without my command. Exactly, Mark said, an oddly satisfied look on his face. A little light began to dawn in the back of my head. Oh, I see now, I said, goosebumps marching down my arms and legs as the truth hit me. This is a witch hunt, isn't it? You don't want to ban Nora from the mentor program. You're after me. I can assure you that your name was not mentioned in the complaints, Santa Greg said, sliding a paper toward me. There is a copy if you'd care to examine it. I don't need to, I said, trying to imitate Nora's calm exterior. Renee was trying to signal me something with an odd form of an eyebrow semaphore, but I didn't have time to translate it. It's quite clear where this is heading. You are going to use the utterly ridiculous and completely groundless idea that Nora could go through me to influence my demon solely to give us grief. On the contrary, Mark answered, we fear just the opposite. Next to me, Nora gasped. Renee's eyes widened. I'm one of the good guys, I said, stunned by the unspoken accusation. I'm a guardian. I protect people, not harm them. You are also a demon lord, have control of a demon, and are high in the powers of the dragon sept. Although your own powers have not been tested by the guild, it is evident that they are beyond the scope of an apprentice. Nora's hand grabbed my wrist. I bit back the smart-ass reply I wanted to make. Is the guild now punishing guardians who show exceptional talent by deeming them dangerous? She asked. I can assure you that I weighed the pros and cons of taking on Ashling as an apprentice. I'm aware of the limitations she has regarding her apprenticeship, but I was convinced she then and remains so, that her dedication, her abilities, and her commitment to the guild are sufficient to overcome any obstacles her other roles may present. Yes, thank you, Royal, for the corgi. Or no, is that not a corgi? Sorry. Might say, but thank you. Yeah, I can't totally tell like different dog breeds apart. Um, and I know like pitties. I look at her a lot, like when she's like, she likes to work her muscles. And I saw people like that want to have pit bulls banned, and they show a picture of a pit bull like in like a stance like Fila has, which she wants to like tug with all her muscle. Now, see, look, this isn't a real dog. Here's a real dog, and they have some like you know Labrador or something like little. And it's like, but she's still a dog. She just looks a little different and weird. But I love my little weirdo. She protects me. Yeah, that's true. I think I know. I think a pure dachshund, maybe. You know what? I feel like Ashling should prove to this man that she's a good guy by lighting him on fire, lighting the whole room on fire. Maybe the imps could come in and she could save him and be like, see? Uh, Ashling is not bad, Renee said suddenly. She's different, yes, but that does not make her bad. We have strayed from the purpose of this interview, Mark said, tapping a pen on his portfolio. I had to speak or burst. I think I should be allowed to defend myself, just as Nora is allowed. And to be perfectly frank, I'm insulted by the idea that you'd call into question my dedication, not to mention Nora's judgment and ability to pick an apprentice. I'm not a bad person. Jan was an accident. I never sought to become a demon lord, and I don't have anything to do with the rest of them. In fact, I don't have anything to do with anyone who dabbles in the dark powers. None whatsoever. A club? What? There was a ripple in the air behind Mark's chair. Outside the room, a distant alarm sounded. In fact, I don't even know anyone who does. The air thickened, twisted, and formed into Obadama. The demon stepped forward, its hands on its hips, as it ignored everyone to glare at me. The Lord Araton has waited for you, but you have not responded. The hour of your appointment with him has passed, and Vexamin is near. You are summoned now to make your fealty to him. Other than Eraton and his minion Obadama, of course, I said, my stomach wadding up into a little ball as three men burst into the room, each bearing a demon banishing silver dagger. I slumped back in my chair. My goose was really cooked now, and I suspected Nora's was as well. Well, that went well, Jim said a couple hours later. as we emerged into the exhaust-laden parking garage. Not. We're free, aren't we? I pinched Jim's ear. Ow, demon abuse. Stop complaining. It's not like you were grilled anyway, or had to put off a demon lord. I just hope Araton isn't going to be pissed that the Guardians sent his minion to Abaddon when I told it I couldn't talk to him right then. I'm sure she gets hazard pay. Jim paused, an odd, abstracted look on its face. Oh boy, I should have gone with Nora when she took Paco to the park. Emergency walkies, like right now. What are you going to do with the demon lord? Renee asked as Jim bolted toward the exit. Ashling, I had stopped when I spied a familiar man standing at the elevator, with one eye on Jim racing toward the street and the other on the man behind us. I shoved the leash at Renee. Would you mind taking Jim to the square? Nora's probably still there walking Paco. Here are two plastic bags. They should take care of things. I see someone I know and just want to find out what he's doing here. What person? Who? Renee asked. A man who may just possibly be stalking me. And if he is, I'm going to put an end to it here and now. Renee looked curious as I turned back the way we came and hurried over to where Peter Burke stood patiently waiting for the elevator. Hi, this is going to sound really rude, I know, but would you mind telling me what you're doing here? I don't think the question is particularly rude, he answered, his eyes just as curiously flat as I remembered them. Either he had an incredible amount of self control, or he was not what he seemed. I decided to try another look at his true self using my super guardian vision. As a matter of fact, I was following you. His answer startled me right out of opening the mental door to my powers. Wait, you admit you're stalking me? Not so much stalking, just trying to find the opportunity to speak with you once more before I return to Paris. He laughed, but the laughter did not reflect on his face. It was as if he wore a mask, shielding his thoughts and feelings from humanity. I'm glad to hear it's not a stalking because my boyfriend is rather possessive, and I don't think you want to tangle with him. What is it you wanted to talk to me about? I asked, knowing it was probably the same thing he wanted last time. You need not look so wary. This is merely a courtesy, not a plea for your help again. My contacts in Paris inform me that since no serious contenders for the position of manager have come forward on the duly allotted time in the duly allotted time, and as you are determined to refuse any nomination should that eventuality materialize, I am assured of victory. I wanted you to know that I appreciate you stepping aside in order to allow me to take the role for which I was intended. I opened my mouth to tell him I was not stepping aside in order to help him when it occurred to me that he was just too slick. I had the distinct feeling that for some bizarre reason he was manipulating me into opposing him. Good luck with the job, I said, fighting back all the responses I had wanted to make. I swung open the door in my mind and took a good long look at him before saying goodbye and walking out to the park across the square. Peter Burke looked exactly the same as when I had seen him in Paris. Utterly the same, in fact. It finally dawned on me what was wrong with that. I don't understand what the problem is, Renee said 5 minutes later, as he returned from the garbage can where he dumped Jim's offerings. Why is something bad with this maid? Everyone looks different somehow with guardian vision, I said, slowly as we headed back to the parking garage. Nora walked alongside me, frowning slightly. Everyone with no exceptions. Usually it's just an aura, but sometimes you can see hidden features or entities tied to a person. I, for instance, look 100 times more handsome, especially now that I have this tooth fixed, Jim said, charging forward at a lull in the traffic. We followed. How do I look different? Renee asked as we turned in the parking garage. I smiled. You've got a slightly golden aura around you. I never thought much about it before, but now, well, now I know. He winked to let me know he understood what I wasn't saying. I had no idea whether Nora had heard the guard at the Guardians Guild say that Renee was immortal, but I wasn't about to spill his secret if she hadn't. Nora has a rose-colored aura. Drake and the other wyverns are surrounded by coronas of dragon's fire. So when this man, this mage, who would be Venetiger, does not look different at all, Renee cocked an eyebrow at me, it means something is up with him. I just wish I knew what. Does it really matter? If you have no intention of interfering with matters in Paris, Nora asked as we approached the car. I suppose not. It's just something odd, and I have enough oddness in my life right now. I'd like a little normalcy for a change. Speaking of the oddness, you did not tell me what you intend to do with the demon lord who wishes you to join him. Renee unlocked the car doors for us. Keep stalling, I guess. I'll keep putting him off until he gives up on me and goes on to something else. Nora looked worried. If he has gone to the trouble of locating you twice, he probably is serious in his desire for you to join your power to his. Well, that's not going to happen. Trust me, I know people. If you stall them long enough, eventually they give up. Since demon lords were once human, he's bound to be the same. Hmm. Nora did not look convinced. My attention, however, was on other things. I say I'm sorry again about everything, but you're probably sick of hearing it. I gave a decidedly wry smile, but as it is, I am really sorry about everything. What do you think the chances are of an appeal? I'm not sure. No one has ever had to appeal this sort of thing before. At least you were not pushed out from the guild, eh? Renee said, obviously trying to look on the bright side of things. He held the door open for Nora and Paco, and Ashley, she was not forbidden from joining. No, but only because they can't refuse admittance because my application was accepted before they had any anti demon lord rules in place. Boy, what a nightmare. It's not as bad as it seems. Nora patted my hand as I climbed into the taxi and sat next to her. Yes, I've had my mentor status stripped from me, but as Renee said, I wasn't kicked out of the guild. And there's always the appeal process. I have no doubt that once I have made my case, the guild will have no choice but to reinstate my title. I hope so. I think it's pretty evident to everyone that I need as much training as I can get. How long do you think the appeal process will take? Up to 2 years, she said calmly as Jim jumped into the front seat next to Renee. 2 years? Her smile was surprisingly calm and without a shred of accusation or disapproval. Don't look so appalled. We will continue as we are, Ashling. But you could get kicked out of the guild. Perhaps, but that's a chance I'm willing to take. But no, no buts, she laughed at the look at my face. Ashling, I'm paying you the highest compliment I know. And you're looking at me as if I've asked you to suck lemons. Stop worrying about things beyond your control and focus on the job you must do. I wanted to argue with her that I wasn't going to let her take a fall for me, but reminded myself in time that I was there to learn from her. She was a big girl. If she didn't think there was a problem with continuing to teach me, then I needed to trust that she was right. I took a couple of deep breaths to calm my agitated brain. Okay, I'll let that go for now. And you're right, I need to focus. I can do this. I'm a professional. You're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you, Jim said in its best Stuart Smiley impression. Only the, was it doggone it, I'm special? Was it? Or no, that's another one. Only the fact that I'm Going to ritually sacrifice you in a half hour is saving your butt, I told it. Can we reopen that topic of discussion? Jim asked. Because I'm really not comfortable with the whole idea. It's like something Lucy on crack would think of. The only thing missing is the demented chocolate making assembly line. Nora and I ignored Jim to go over once again our plans for the imps. You're sure this ward is going to be enough to protect me against a mass attack? I asked a short while later as we tromped over a partially wooded field on Hampstead Heath and headed for a culvert that led to an underground lair. I stood in front of the opening, which was about 4 feet high, and fretted. A lot was riding on this, not just an end to the imp attacks, but I needed to prove that I could handle myself in a situation where Nora would not be available to back me up. She shook her head at me. Ashling, I told you. It's your belief in the ward that creates the magic, not mine. You must believe in your power to protect yourself. Well, that I had no trouble with. I was a relatively tough chick. I'd kissed a wyvern and lived to tell the tale. I breathed fire, and I've been skewered and still managed to carry on as usual. It was just about all the other things out of my control I worried about. Okay, I can do this. I drew the protection ward across my chest, satisfied when it glowed silver in the air for a few seconds before melting away. Are you going to, are you sure you do not want us with you? Renee asked, squatting on his heels to peer into the culvert. Dirt and debris had been washed out of it, but it looked relatively clear. An occasional flicker of movement indicated rodents, but those didn't cause me any grief. I will watch your back. As you said, I am the sidekick extraordinaire. I'd love for you to come along, but Nora says it would never work. The imps are bound to be touchy about this whole thing, and they won't negotiate if anyone else is there. So wish me luck, and if I'm not out in an hour, send in a whole platoon of drakes, please. Nora gave me a thumbs up as I stepped into the culvert. Renee wished me a bon chance. Jim peed in 3 different spots, tried to convince me it was going to throw up a hairball, and finally, reluctantly, shambled after me as I hunched over and crab walked my way into the belly of the imp kingdom. The last bit of daylight winked out as the big drainage pipe turned a corner. Before I could switch on the flashlight Nora had thoughtfully provided, a small herd of imps bearing tiny little torches descended upon us. Stop! I yelled in my most forceful voice, putting my belief of my power behind it as Nora had warned. The imps swarmed around me, some of their torches coming dangerously close to my clothing. The ward glowed brightly in the air for a moment, though causing the tiny little beasties to pause in their attack. I am Ashlyn Gray. Oh, thank you, Terry. You was on the phone. As I said earlier, how dare you? How is your dad? Doing good? I am here to negotiate with your monarch. I bring to him the true slayer of. I had to stop to take a quick glance at the name I'd written on my hand so I wouldn't forget it. May Hagennaus the Fourth. Behold the imp killing demon Ephraim. You're loving every minute of this, aren't you? Jim muttered as the imps held their collective breaths for a moment. Then, with a bunch of high-pitched squeaks, ran over to surround Jim. It bared its teeth and snapped at a couple who got too close. Do not touch the demon, I bellowed in the same pushy voice. I am here to negotiate the sacrifice of it with your monarch. Take us to him. Jim rolled its eyes as the imps gathered together in a clutch for a moment, their squeaky yip yips making my teeth itch. You couldn't think up a more original version of take me to your leader? No, and hush, you're supposed to be repentant, remember? Yeah, right. And imps could fly out my ass. Hey, there's an idea. I'll make it a command if you can't keep your lips zipped, I whispered. Evidently, I had done the demanding bit right because the imps turned en masse and escorted us deeper into the culvert. It took another 5 minutes of crab walking, sometimes almost crawling, to get through to their main living area. But with the imps on one side pulling and me behind shoving, we managed to get Jim's bulky body through a very narrow opening and into a large open area. Welcome to Imp Central, Jim said, licking a patch of dirt off its shoulder. I don't know what I was expecting, some sort of cavern with grubs and rats, but the imp's main headquarters wasn't anything like my expectations. The walls were curved like a tunnel, but tiled. The floor was cement and relatively clean, although awash in imps. Forerunners from our escort had warned the main assembly that we were coming, for they had a path cleared for us to walk up to a small pedestal with a stone garden bench, upon which sat a blue imp slightly larger than the others. It held up two of its four hands, and the yip yips that had broken out at our appearance silenced. Mindful of Nora's advice, I made a show of bowing before the monarch. Do not show weakness, she had said, but be respectful. I decided a little buttering up wouldn't hurt either. Greetings, O mighty Imp King. I am Ashlyn Gray, the guardian, wyvern's mate, and demon lord. I come to you in the spirit of cooperation to make amends for the death of Mahiganus the Fourth. The Imp King's eyes narrowed. It squeaked something at me. I didn't quite catch that. Oh, great. Why had none of us thought about the fact that I didn't speak Imp? The Imp King gestured, and from behind his stone throne, a small green being emerged. It was the size of a small child, but horribly malformed. His majestic majesty, Mahaganus the Fifth, sovereign of all imps, bids you to explain why you insult him by bringing the slayer Ephraim into his presence. I am here to negotiate the cessation of hostilities between the imps and myself. I am no enemy to imps. The king stood up and shouted at me. At least I assumed the aggressive noises it made were shouts. I know it shook three fists at me in a menacing fashion. The imps surrounding us leaped up and down and yipped their opinions as well. You are demon lord to the slayer. You must be destroyed as well as it. I am no enemy to the imps, I said firmly, looking at the king in the eyes. I have much power. I could wage a war the likes of which you have not seen for many millennia. Instead, I come in peace to bring the demon and offer to sacrifice it myself to appease the heinous crime it has committed. You should be on a soap opera. You really should, Jim said, almost inaudibly, over the noise of a couple thousand yipping imps. Silence, I roared, startling Jim as well as the imps. I lifted my hand in a dramatic manner and pinned back the Imp King with a firm gaze. See within my hand the silver dagger of death. I will destroy this demon once and for all. Oh, I don't like this. Ah, thank you, Jerry, for the maracas. I need a little maracas this moment because I am scared. What she's gonna do is have him put in the limbo with that little spell, and something's gonna happen to him. I don't trust this. I don't trust this plan. Let's see. With its death, there will be peace between your kingdom and me. Is that agreed? The king thought for a moment, consulted with a couple of advisors, then gestured for the green being. What is that? I asked Jim in a whisper. The translator? That's a Bogart. Sort of the poor relation to the imp world. Nasty little things. Don't turn your back on it. I hadn't planned on it. The Bogart fixed its cold black eyes on me, gesturing toward the Imp King. His benevolent majesty, Mahagonus the Fifth, graciously accepts your offer of peace. You may proceed with the sacrifice. I knelt before the king, dragging Jim down onto its side at the foot of the throne. If this doesn't work, you better find me a body just as good as this one, or I'm going to make your life a living Abaddon, it warned me as it scrunched its eyes closed, its face a grimace of imagined pain. Oh, this is so sad. Oh, thank you again, Jerry. Mm, What makes you think you haven't already? I pressed Jim's paw quickly before lifting the dagger overhead with both hands, opening up the doorway in my mind. By this act, I avenged the death of Mahagonus the Fourth. By my hand, I sacrificed this demon to its origins in Abaddon. By my voice, I command thee to leave this existence and return to that where I send you. I plunged the dagger into Jim's inert body just as the last words were spoken, throwing down at the same time a little ball of dragon fire. Oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Don't hurt him. The flames hit the stone floor and burst upward, then back down in an imperative shower of sparks that had the imps within a 30-foot radius screaming and slapping at themselves. When the smoke cleared, I bowed again to the king, held up the dagger to show the blood on it. Oh, and made my way out of there as quickly as possible. Renee was perched on a rock smoking a cigarette. How very French. Oh, thank you, Royal. Thank you. Oh, thanks. I think this has a top that's like it. But if you like the metallic, I do have some more metallic like outfits. But yes, thank you. Mm, Again. Oh, the blood. Oh no, not Jim. The flames hit the stone floor and burst upward, then back down in an impressive shower of sparks that had the imps within a 30-foot radius screaming and slapping at themselves. When the smoke cleared, I bowed again to the king, held up the dagger to show the blood on it, and made my way out of there as quickly as possible. Renee was perched on a rock, smoking a cigarette, staring up at a few clouds dotting the sky. Nora paced past the opening, Paco trotting obediently at her heels. She spun around when she saw me. How did it go? I tipped my head toward the culvert. I wasn't certain the imp patrol hadn't followed me, but I didn't want to take any chances. I destroyed Jim before them all. Come on, I need a bandage. I forget to get one before we left, and this dagger is sharper than I thought. My hand is stinging like a son of a gun. Chapter 18. Murderous imps down, murderous red dragons, and equally homicidal demon lords to go, I announced as we returned to the house. Drake walked out of the library to where we stood in the hall, looking from me to Renee, Nora, and Jim. Jim, one of his delicious eyebrows rose in the way that never failed to make my legs go all melty. I am delighted to hear of your success. How did you achieve it? I sacrificed Jim. Is there any lunch left? I know it's late, but I'm starving, and I know Nora and Renee must be just hungry. Drake considered the very real form of Jim for a moment. I'm sure we can appease your hunger in some manner. If I could have a word with you for a moment first. Of course, I said, noting the fire visible in his eyes. Either he was annoyed with me about something or aroused. Either way, it was better to have no witnesses to whatever it was he wanted. I entered the library and leaned against the desk, watching as he moved toward me. Drake didn't so much as walk as prowl, almost stalking like a big cat. It was a fabulous interplay of muscles and sinew, and I had the worst desire to ask him to take off all his clothes. so I could watch his body move as he walked, but I knew full well that if he took his clothes off, I'd pounce on him. Looks like Ash is going to get her hunger appeased, all right, Jim said before the door closed behind Drake. I tipped my head a little and did my best to bat my eyelashes as the light of my life approached. You wanted to see me? I have a challenge tonight. He stopped in front of me, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the heat of his body. I leaned toward him, intending on kissing the breath right out of his mouth, but the meaning of his words sank through the miasma of passion. The challenge from Dmitri? I thought you settled that. Isn't that why he was here yesterday? The irises in his eyes narrowed a bit, making him look even dragonier. He was here yesterday to settle the terms of the challenge, not to dismiss it. I perched on the edge of the desk and considered the gorgeous hunk of dragon in front of me. A little glow of happiness that he was mine, warming my insides. I like this whole I ask a question and you actually answer it thing. I could get used to it. He grimaced. I assume this counts as sharing my thoughts. I expect extra credit for being so accommodating. As he spoke, his hand slid up my knees, parting my legs so he stood between them. This isn't a contest, It's not like you accrue a certain number of intimacy points and then you can stop telling me things. It's called sharing, and I'm going to expect you to do it for the rest of your life. Now, about this challenge, my breath came shorter and shorter as his hands returned to my knees, this time his long fingers sliding under the silk material of my skirt, tracing an intricate, arousing pattern up my bare thighs. Yes, he leaned forward, his mouth brushing the sweet spot behind my ear. Within me, passion, desire, and love all roared to life at his nearness, answering his silent call. Possessing General Zoom. Oh my god. Jerry, you need a character in one of your comics, General Zoom. Sharing is caring. What is that from, Terry? What is that from? It like rings a bell, but I'm not pinging where it's chiming from, Okay. My breath came shorter and shorter as his hands returned to my knees, this time his long fingers sliding under the silk material of my skirt, tracing an intricate and arousing pattern up my bare thighs. Yes, he leaned forward, his mouth brushing the sweet spot behind my ear. Within me, passion, desire, and love all roared to life at his nearness, answering his silent call. I, you, Drake, everyone is waiting for us. They saw us go in here. If we stay to make love, which I admit sounds like heaven right now, they're going to know exactly what we're doing. And while I don't care that they know we are mated, I really hate to flaunt illicit sex in their faces. He nibbled the edge of my ear, his hand sliding up to the apex of my thighs, stroking the satin of my underwear. I squirmed against his fingers, suddenly feeling that we both had far too many items of clothing on, clothing that constricted and bound and was just plain old in the way. What we're doing is not illicit, Kingsome. It is recognized and sanctioned by the sept. My knees tightened around his hips as his fingers struck pay dirt, sliding beneath the now damp satin to torment me further. Do you need to pee? Yes! Can I borrow your shower? A journey for days. Mm. Listen. Yes, by the step, but not by the rest of the world, I said, on a half sob, yanking his shirt out of his pants so I could stroke the delicious planes of his chest beneath it. His fingers froze in their beautiful dance of pleasure, his mouth ceasing the delicious nuzzling. He frowned slightly. You are speaking of human marriage. You wish for me to marry you. Now, that is a question that a few short days ago would have had me rolling on the floor in hysterical laughter. I swear, when hear marriage now, I hear that song, from the band Train. He's like, marry me. Like, and I think it's because that's what they play on Love is Blind. So I slowly hear like the song again. It's such a pretty song though. Oh, mm. My family is going to have a collective heart attack if they find out I'm shacked up with you for any length of time without marrying you. So, although I don't want to run out today and get married, I think that ultimately we're going to have to talk it over. You understand that being a mate is much more binding than a human legal convenience, which can be unmade so easily. Yes, I understand, although I'd like to point out that you yourself mentioned I can't be demated, I guess. I swear flames flickered in the depths of his lovely green eyes. Not easily, he growled, his fingers sharp against my flesh. With a polished move, he whipped my underwear off my body without unseating me, grabbing my hips and pulling me forward to the very edge of the desk. I was pressed so tightly against him. I could feel the thud of his heart. You are mine, and you will stay mine. I melted against him, my fingers dancing along the swells of his chest as I nibbled on his sweet lower lip. Sounds good to me, only I sighed and released his lip. We can't now, Drake. Oh, don't look at me like that. I want to just I want to just as badly as you do. I squirmed against his fingers. As you can tell for yourself, but we can't. Everyone is waiting for us. As if on cue, the door to the library opened. There you are. You are engaging in intercourse again. Has the woman been tested for diseases? Drake sighed into my mouth, gave me a little taste of his fire that had me mentally damning my any circumspection and reluctancy, pulled himself away from me to face his mother. In the future, you will knock before entering this room. Don't be ridiculous. This house was mine. I do not knock in my own home. Catalina swept into the room, pausing for a moment to frown at my underwear lying on the floor at my feet. That is obscene. Tell your woman to remove it from my view. I started to slide off the desk to retrieve my undies, not because she ordered me to, but because I wasn't comfortable having them lying around as an object d'art. But Drake wrapped his arm around me and pulled me close. This house is mine now, and you will knock when you enter my private rooms. In addition, you will address Ashley by her name and refrain from giving her orders. Catalina smiled and sank gracefully into the nearest chair, crossing one leg over the other to show off a pair of elegant and no doubt extremely pricey shoes. I am thirsty. Have your woman bring me wine. Spanish, not French. Oh, she's so rude. Drake's face darkened with anger, his eyes flashing a warning. Mother, I have just told you. You know what? I'm going to let you two argue this out in private while I go grab a late lunch. I kissed the tip of Drake's nose just because I knew it would annoy Catalina and picked up my underwear. We can finish this discussion later, Drake, maybe while you're showing me the pool. Yes, later, he said, his eyes filled with desire. I smiled to myself as I left the room. Water was the green dragon's element, and they had a special affinity for baths and pools. A large sunken bathtub filled with warm scented water was one of Drake's favorite places to make love, and I had to admit that I was very much looking forward to seeing the lap pool he told me was located in the basement of the house. Ashling, telephone. Pal handed me a cordless phone as I left the library. Thanks. Hello? Bonjour, Ashling. It is Emily here. The tense tone in her voice, so different from her cheery self when I had called her earlier, signaled that all was not well. I leaned against the wall and idly watched the people walk by on the street below. I'd say nice to hear from you, but I have a horrible feeling I'm not going to like what you have to say. None, you are not. The situation here is very bad indeed. It is. Without a doubt that Peter Burke has his origins in the dark powers. No one knows where he has come from. No one knows who he is. He simply showed up after the Veneticur's death and stated his intentions to take the position. We cannot tolerate such a being as he in control of the Laudella. My spirits fell. Damn it. Any idea why he's trying to get me in the position of Venetiger? No, but I must tell you, the feeling here is very warm toward you. People are saying that you are a guardian, thus you will be able to control him, banish him even. I banged my head a couple of times on the wall. Hal, sitting in the next room, leaned sideways to look at me. I waved and walked to the other end of the hall. Did you tell them I'm not interested? That there's no way whatsoever I can do the job? Yes, but they do not care. Hi, cutie. Hi. Ashley, I know you do not wish for this to be thrust upon you. What the hell? What are you about? You want to go out? Okay, go on. Demon, I command thee. Oh, it worked. Okay. Is it a cordless phone? Huh, I don't know. Maybe she's barking. Maybe she hears people with their barrels. Okay, where was I? Oh, yes, the Ventigers. Okay. I know you do not wish for this to be thrust upon you, but I, too, will vote for you over this dark one. I groaned. This is not happening. This is just not happening. Perhaps you could agree to be Venetiger as a temporary situation only, Emily suggested, only until another person, one more suitable, could take the job. No, not happening. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to happen. Then we are all doomed, Emily said sadly, and after a few more minutes of discussion, she hung up. I struggled with a vague sense of guilt that I should be doing something to help, but I honestly didn't see what I could do without taking on yet another massive responsibility. I straightened my shoulders, put the problem on my mental back burner, and went to get some lunch. Wow, Jim said, glancing from its plate to the clock as I entered a small, sunny dining room. That was fast. Drake losing his touch. Drake will never lose his touch. Not that it's any of your business. I stopped in front of the demon, my hands on my hips. What on earth is that? Your panties, I think, it answered, squinting at my hip. Doesn't it look like panties to you, Renee? We, very much so. Satin? I stuffed the undies I held in one hand into my top, giving Jim a good glare. Less observation and more explaining. What is all that food on your plate? You're not allowed to eat that much. You're on a diet, remember? Yeah, but have you eaten any of it? I interrupted. I was just about to. Hey! No excuses, Buster. I scraped half the amount of chicken salad, one hard boiled egg, and several pieces of garlic toasted French bread onto another plate, returning a diminished portion to the demon. Nora sat down next to me as I took a fork from the sideboard and, with a meaningful look, removed a small plate of chocolate cake from Jim's possession. Cake thief, it muttered, managing to look sullen even while eating chicken salad. Mm, Thursday's garbage day. Well, yeah, I brought it out last night, but she might hear people bringing their barrels back right now that got home and it's like, the wheels or something. Yeah. Cake thief and muttered, managing to look sullen even while eating chicken salad. You owe me after I put up with being disemboweled and stuff. I rolled my eyes at the disemboweled accusation and ate the confiscated portion of his lunch. I never asked because you were bleeding, but your fire, it worked? Renee asked, munching on bread and thin sliced steak. Yeah, it worked fine. It hit just as I plunged the knife down, hiding the fact that Jim's body had disappeared when I spoke the words, sending it to Akasha. Ah, you have learned to control the fire. This is good? Definitely. Ashley, Pal stuck his head into the room. There is a demon at the door for you. It demands you go with it to meet with the demon lord Araton. I waved a fork of chicken salad at him. Would you tell Obadama that I'm busy for the next couple of days, but as soon as I have a free hour, I'll pop in to visit Araton? Pal blinked twice. Very well. I smiled at everyone in the room as he left. There's something to be said for living with a dragon who knows how to keep demons out. My wee, Renee said, helping himself to another hunk of bread. We spent a few minutes talking about what I'd done with the imps. Nora suggesting we spend some time going over the more common attributes of several recently spotted beings. I begged off for a quick nap, feeling drained by the events of the last couple days. En route to the room, however, I heard Drake's voice saying something to Pal about the swimming pool. I raced down the back stairs as quietly as possible, my libido shifting into high gear. The pool wasn't hard to find and thankfully had a door with a lock on it for privacy. I smiled at it as I sat on a cedar bench and kicked off my shoes, removed my underwear from where I'd stuffed it into my bra, and peeled off the rest of my clothes in record time. Drake liked his water warm rather than cool, so I wasn't surprised to find the temperature of the lap pool a little warmer than normal. I didn't mind it and swam a few lazy laps while I waited for him. I thought you were tired. I swam to the end of the pool and admired the man who stood leaning against the door. I thought I was. Then I remembered this pool and figured a little gentle exercise would do my gore spot good. Drake squatted next to me. Is it bothering you? There was no redness this morning. Let me see. I swam backwards, smiling. You'll have to come here if you want to examine my belly. His eyes, which had been exhibiting a subtle green smolder, lit from deep in their depths. He glanced at his watch. I have a chevauché shortly. A what? I reached the steps, lolling around the water like a seductive sea nymph, flashing signals with my eyes that I was sure he couldn't miss. He pulled off his shirt, carefully placing it on a cedar bench, sitting briefly to remove his shoes and socks. I smiled and undulated at him. Technically, it means a horseback raid, but in this instance, it is a ritual performed by those about to undergo a challenge. His eyes narrowed when I ran a hand down my breastbone, the irises in his eyes all but disappearing as my back arched, exposing my breast. I've been meaning to talk to you about that challenge. What exactly is going to happen, and what do you need to do? And why aren't you naked and inside me yet? A splash was all the answer he needed to make before I could wipe the water from my eyes. I was in his arms, my nipples rubbing against his now slick chest. I squirmed a happy little squirm that had as much of me touching him as possible, licking a couple drops of water off his chin. Dmitri has chosen trial by combat for the challenge in specific swords. You need do nothing other than be present. And believe me, Kinsum, being inside you is all I can think about. We have been parted too many times today. I have been hungry for you. My hand slid around his hips to the proof of his hunger. Good, because I'm positively famished. Mm, I feel like I should end it there for the night and pick it up on Sunday. Um, because I'm afraid my little demon might be famished. I mean, I microwaved her some sausage earlier. I found in the freezer. So, what happened today? The imp problem, I feel it seems to be taken care of because she's got a lot of problems. So I was like, are there any coming off her plate at all? Um, so we got the imp one. She did her fake sacrifice of Jim. Although now, we know more about the problem with Nora. We have the Jim's tooth got fixed. We have the dragon sept fighting still going on, and now his challenge and the Venetiger thing. Um, but I think that the deal with Renee, he may be in, like Terry said, like a special, like a CIA underworld. He may have something that like ties into this puzzle that fixes it. That he may be the missing solution, like whatever his role is. But I don't know. We'll see. The thing with the mother-in-law, I don't think that'll ever get solved because, like, that's how that's how some people are. All right. Get some sleep. Call in tomorrow. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Call in tomorrow, Friday. I love you so much. And EQ. I'm thinking of taking a shower or a bath tonight. I found some pumpkin spice scented bath bombs while I was cleaning tonight. So a little plan, maybe. Mwah, love you.